StartUpGrind, and most of all, thank you guys for all showing up and coming. And David, thank you for coming to Israel. It's
Of course.
big of you. Round of applause, guys. It's a long flight from San Francisco. And so we're here in a joint event. For us, it's the kickoff of the yearly summit of ISCL. I'll explain in a second. It's also a meetup from StartUpGrind. And we'll explain the story of StartUpGrind and David's, but we did a Kahoot and did a joint venture, a joint event together. And ISCL is a company that started from an idea of bringing startup community leaders together from all over the world to Tel Aviv. We did an event last year. It wasn't a company, it was just an idea. And it was so strong and it was so appealing and compelling to so many people. We got 500 people from 49 countries, and we understood it's something very serious, the idea of combining community and startups, and the idea of entrepreneurs and innovation in the world of community. After the summit, we understood we want to create something more, and maybe some kind of organization that can help other organizations understand what's community and how to connect them with startups. And that's what we're doing today. It's a kind of a consultancy. We're still finding our way and having some kind of the first clients. We'll have some really interesting news that we're going to say tomorrow in the main event of the Executives Inspiration event. And Michal from Startup Nation, one of our main sponsors and helpers and everything. Yeah, woo! That we're collaborating with. And that's about us and me, and I got that out of the way, and we can start for the main event, which is just interviewing David. So let's just start. Hey David, how are you doing?
Pretty good. Can you hear
Do
me?
you need a microphone or?
Is this working? I guess my live mic's not working. How's everyone doing? All right. I'm doing good, Mike. Thanks for asking. This is going to be real fun, having a normal conversation while heading back over the mic.
Thanks. Okay, so the first question is, David, what are you doing here?
Hello?
Who are you? Tell us a bit about your history, about how you started your life as a newborn in New York.
As a newborn. This one's not working, right? Not working. It's working? You can hear him in there. Oh, it's for you. So we need this. Got it. Okay. We figured it out. Very high tech. So what the question was, my life as a newborn.
No, just I was joking. Tell us about your life story that led you to come here.
Yeah, so I was born in New York. My mom's Israeli. Yeah. We got one more coming. Nice. My mom was born in Rishon LeZion. She grew up in Israel. My dad was born in Dublin, Ireland. Moved to Israel to work at a hotel. Met a lovely lady at that hotel and fell in love. Got married and then moved to New York. And I was born a year later. So that's my birth story. But yeah, I grew up in New York. Grew up with immigrant parents, which brought a good amount of isolation and not quite fitting in early on in my life. Looked to be a part of a community and struggled to find community a lot early in my childhood. And I think that is kind of where my passion for community was rooted from, was not being able to find community at a young age. And when I couldn't find it in my town, I turned to the internet. Before Facebook, before all the tools that exist today, back when the only people doing this were really weird, I was online on IRC chats. I started video game communities. I started the largest Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 community.
Everybody knows it.
Anybody THPS 4 fans? All right. There's always, there's 2 here. That's twice as much as usual. So I kind of got experience building online forums and online communities. We had thousands of members.
How old were you then?
13, I think. And we had a team of 3. One of the guys was a developer, built the site. I managed the community. And there were a lot of trolls.
Did you call it the community management?
No.
Right?
No, it was just a forum. And so I became really fascinated by how technology could connect people and how people could find community through technology. And so just read a lot about it and became really interested in it. And then I went to college for business administration, and they weren't even teaching social media. They were teaching like old school marketing. And I was like, that's weird. No one's doing that anymore. So I actually pitched the first social media class in our business school at my college, and we launched the first class, which I automatically got an A since I helped launch it. So that worked out. And then I was writing about community a lot, community management and social business on my blog. And a startup found my blog, read it, and emailed me, and they said, do you want an internship building community for us for this summer? And I was like, sure, why not? It's a not paying job. And so I moved to Philly, took that job, and that was my first job as a community manager. But again, it was like no one knew what community management was. There wasn't a guide for how to do this. No one talked about it. And I would ask all these people, and no one would have any idea how to do community management. So I just had to kind of learn. I had mentors and marketing to work with, and over the years I started meeting a few other people in similar positions to me, building community, and started to just kind of build a good network. I founded the communitymanager.com about 8 years ago to start writing about what we were learning and share other people's stories, and we had a job board, and that ultimately led to launching CMX 5 years ago. CMX started as a conference. The idea was I believe that this was kind of the future of how business would work. I believe this would be a big industry, but a big industry needs a big conference. So I wonder if we made a conference happen, if that would make the whole space feel more legitimate, and we could bring people together who are all building community for a living to connect with each other and build a community of community managers. Very meta. And I was running a different second startup at the and kind of already starting to wind it down, but then CMX Summit just was incredible, right? Like, it's that experience. 300 people at that first event from all over the world, paying customers that they're community people who paid to come together. And every person who walked in the room, you could see them look around and be like, I thought I was the only person who did this work. And they were like, I didn't expect there to be more than 10 people at this event, because that's usually how many people were showing up to community manager events there. We had 300 people. We had the head of community from Lyft and Airbnb. We had David McMillan, who invented this sense of community theory 30 years ago. He's like a huge community psychologist. And we got these incredible speakers. Robin Dreek, who's head of behavioral analysis at the FBI. I just convinced all these people that this mattered, and they came and spoke, and the response was just incredible. Like, if you've ever, like, community's addicting, because that first time that you bring people together that felt really isolated, alone, and then you see them really connect with each other and not feel alone, it's like, that to me is the most rewarding feeling in the world. And so it's like, that's my drug, it's community.
I think most of the people are here are thinking of that drug. And
It's a good drug.
It's an amazing drug, and it does good for others. But you said you were younger, you started the forum, and by the way, what was your title of the company? Like, what?
It wasn't a company, I was 13. It was like a video game.
Good point.
I was a founder of Fate, was our clan name.
You were a clan?
We had a clan, that's what you call them, clans.
So
Not like the weird kind of clan, like gaming clans.
KKK. So
You said it.
I said it totally. So when you were in the clan, and you said you read a lot on the internet, but you said nobody was writing about it. Who was your influence? Who did you take from inspiration?
Good question. I had some good mentors. Jeremiah Aoyang was like really involved in community at that time. He was one of the first influencers there. I read a book called Groundswell. Anyone ever read Groundswell? Like 10 years ago? Nice.
Now 20%.
So, well, it was like one of the first books that really talked about the power of community for business, and the idea of Groundswell was this idea of building a groundswell around your brand and like finding ambassadors and empowering people through social technology to advocate for your brand. It was written by Charlene Lee, who's actually pretty cool. This is our 10th conference this year, and she's going to be speaking at our conference. Wow. And she wrote the book that basically like inspired me down this whole career path.
Does she know that?
I tweeted about it and I tagged her, so now she does.
Okay. That's not awkward anymore. It's like,
Is what I'm doing.
So, that's amazing. So you started with 300 in CMX in 2014?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And you had amazing speakers from, do you remember who the speakers were?
I named like 5 of them. You want more?
Yeah. Oh, you already named them.
I named them.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had Dave McClure, Lagaya Tishi, who built the Airbnb program from the ground up, Emily Castor, who built the Lyft program from the ground up, David McMillan, Robin Drake, Ellen Lenz, who built the Apple community program from the ground up, which is crazy because when she started, there wasn't, like, the internet was in its early infancy. So there was no way of like finding these groups where people were talking about Apple, but she like knew that they were happening. So she found out about all of them through word of mouth and would find these, they called them user groups back then, like the Apple user groups program. And she was the first customer advocate for Apple, and all their community programs ended up coming out of that. So yeah, those are some of the speakers we had at the first event, which is, I don't know how we did that. We also put together that event in 6 weeks.
That's hands off amazing. After we did this one in 2 months and the person
Yeah.
I said,
Yeah.
that's amazing. 6 weeks is great.
I shook hands with my partner. It was like this, like end of November, early December, and then the event was, and then we didn't start it right away because of the holidays. We started like January, and then the event was February 4th.
And how many people from out of town came to the event?
I think about 20% were from out of the country, actually.
But in the U.S.
In the U.S., out of San Francisco, I don't remember. Yeah.
Okay. And what happened? Like, we know what happened with ISCO. What happened to CMX, an event you don't expect? You get somebody. You told me you changed the venue in the middle, right? You
No, that was New York. The next event.
Next event?
We sold 300 tickets to the first event, and we're like really confident. We're like, cool, let's do an event in New York, and we can make it even bigger. We'll sell 400 tickets at this one. We didn't sell 400 tickets. New York turned out to be a harder market. Conferences are crazy. It's so hard to predict. We ended up like underselling a lot, and we changed the venue like 3 weeks before the event for a major conference.
Oh, so it's a bad story. I heard you told me you changed the event. Okay, that's, and how many did you have in the end?
250.
250.
Yeah, I think 200, 250, something like that. And it ended up being an incredible event. Everyone was super happy. It was great, but we almost lost $50,000. We're a bootstrap business. So if that happened, like that was my $50,000. I didn't have $50,000. So like company dead, I'm CMX gone. If we didn't switch that venue and figure out how to get to break even in the last minute, which like I probably would not have been able to do that. I had a great partner who's very scrappy. He was my partner for the first year. His name's Max Altschuler. He runs Sales Hacker. Another
Altschuler, that's a very famous name in Israel, you know.
Altschuler? I don't know.
Okay, it's a huge finance company.
Maybe they're related.
Maybe they are.
But he built a sales community, and that grew as well. So we only worked together on CMX for about a year. But anyway, it survived. We had a community, a Facebook group for our conference, for our attendees to talk to each other. And that was getting really active just from the conference, which is a great way to kick off a group, is to do a live event. And so we opened it up, and we said, instead of just being for attendees, we'll open it up to anyone who's a community professional. Now there's almost 10,000 members in that group, all community builders and community professionals. It's insanely active. A lot of you are probably in the CMX Hub group on Facebook. If not, you should join. And so that became kind of our online home. And then we were running 2 events a year, New York and San Francisco. We started doing local events around the world, and just, you know, figuring out how to build a business around it, figuring out what other things the industry needs. So over the last 5 years, we've launched large-scale research projects to understand how businesses are measuring the value of community. We've trained teams at now probably thousands of companies that have come to our training programs and workshops. We have a 6-week training program we developed. And we're really just trying to find all the ways that we can support community professionals and help elevate the community industry.
That's amazing. So you finished the event. You had did you have clients after the event? That was the goal of the event?
No, we never focused on getting clients. We never wanted to be a consultancy. I wanted to build a platform.
So what happened? Was the CMX Hub? What platform?
Yes, CMX is a platform in my mind. It's a space to put the spotlight on all the different businesses who are doing really good work in this space. We put people on stage. We collect research. It's a hub. We're trying to connect all the different pieces, the people, technology. We're partnered with every single community platform now, content and education, and essentially figure out what this whole ecosystem needs so that we can support it in different ways.
And when you say the main space of the platform is all Facebook?
No, that's just like kind of the home for conversation, right? Like people That's where they gather to talk to each other. But we have our website, we have events, we have a Slack. Our community started their own Slack group.
So you have another community on Slack? Do you have
Mhm.
people, how many people are on Slack now?
I think 1,000 in that community.
So it's more than the hub? No, the hub you have
Hub's like 10,000, yeah,
9,000.
almost 10,000.
Okay.
And that was started by the community. It's completely community run. We don't do anything in Slack.
So today I'm going to give you a small secret. We're going to speak about two of your frameworks that we talk about a lot.
Sure.
One of them is more new. How did you start? What was the first framework you created?
Good question. I don't remember. I think maybe space.
Your favorite? Space?
I think maybe the space model.
Did you trademark any other? Because I know space is a trademark.
No, I mean, if you look at their trademarks, at least in the U.S., I don't know how it works here, but essentially, like, we didn't want to pay for it ultimately. It's really expensive and time consuming, but essentially, if you've already identified that you can get the trademark, you don't really have to unless there's a challenge, and then you have the right of like first refusal basically to have the trademark. So it's our IP. We don't have the trademark for it.
Oh, so you just put it like you have first right of refusal until somebody comes and challenges.
Yeah,
Oh,
we
that's
can get the
awesome.
trademark for any of the frameworks we've developed.
Okay, so again, frameworks. Space, one of your favorites. Any other you want to mention before we go and talk about the main?
The two most popular are the space model, which are we going to talk about that one?
Not today, tomorrow.
Okay, so space is how businesses measure the value of community, support, product, acquisition, content, and contribution, kind of interchanged, and engagement. And that was it's our most popular framework because when a company talks about building community, what do they mean? Everyone would say that, but they're talking about different things, and they don't really understand what the value is that they're trying to drive for the organization. And so the space model is used to help companies define what the value of community is to their organization. So support is where you're trying to provide support to your customers, customer support programs. Products is where you're fueling innovation, collecting feedback and insights from your community. Acquisition is growth. Your community members are ambassadors and advocates helping you grow your business. Content and contribution is where you're a platform that you need contributors to be adding content to, or code or actions, and so you're trying to make your contributors successful. And then engagement is essentially retention, lifetime value. And community can drive any of those 5 values. And so that's one of the first things we do with every organization when we look at a community strategy is we say, like, what's your objective and what are you trying to accomplish with community? Because building community just for the sake of community is a recipe for failure because you'll end up not being able to justify the investment.
So tomorrow when we have the executive event and they want to see an ROI on their community, that's where tomorrow you're going to give a lot of examples on the space model tomorrow. But today we're going to speak about the 7 Ps, which is pretty new. It's like you took the canvas and you made it more easy to digest it.
Yeah, we had a community canvas. So if you know like the business model canvas, you know that one? Yeah. So the business model canvas is like, here are the things you need to figure out when you're trying to build a business plan. So we built a canvas version of that for community. Turns out canvases are really hard to remember. It's not easy to like repeat and reiterate. And so yeah, that's kind of the thinking. So 7 Ps is like our fundamental framework now. So if you're starting to build your community program.
And what are your whiteboards for this thing? You
Start.
write it down?
I could just talk about it.
Yeah,
That's
let's talk
fine.
about it.
All right, so you guys want to hear it? Yeah. I don't want to share it if you don't want to hear it. You sure? Okay. You sound so
It's
excited.
worthwhile.
Okay, fine, I'll share. So the first one is P, people. So who are you bringing together? Why are you bringing them together? So the first two kind of always come hand in hand. So it's people and purpose. So it's who you're bringing together and why you bringing them together, right? So purpose. Ta-da.
Ta-da.
Okay, I'll write that. Oh good. Okay. So. Alright. 1, 2, 3.
And now you need to let them guess it.
Well, I already told them the first two, so. So you have people and purpose are the first two, and so those come hand in hand. These like everything comes from this. If you don't understand who you're trying to bring together and why they need community, everything else kind of falls apart. And this seems obvious, right? Of course you need that. But so many companies build a community without really thinking about why does this community need to exist. To them, they're like, we want to improve support, which is great from the business perspective. But why do their members? Who's going to be contributing? Who's going to answer the questions? What are their motivations, right? So purpose, we break down into the value to the member and the value to your organization. And people is really, really, really understanding what is unique about your community, who belongs and who doesn't belong, specific identity that you're trying to bring together, right? Like for founders, but can you get more specific to founders? Founders in their early stages, is it founders on the industry, right? Everyone here is a founder who's somewhat interested. So what's the identity, right? For CX, it was community professionals. They didn't know there were other people like them. And we created a identity community professional and built an entire community around this identity. What are their aspirations? How does community help them? And then figure out what is their purpose? Why are we doing this community? The third one, anyone want to guess? Third one? Do you already know what it is?
Yes?
Maybe. It's like, all right, well, you cheated. All right, so place, you know who you're bringing together, why you're bringing them like around this space. Obviously, it's beautiful, which is really, you want your place to be compelling and exciting. The order that you're sitting in, right? How did people enter into this space? And they kept everyone in that area first to eat and talk, and then they moved everyone into the rest of the space, right? Do you want it to be a small group with a private dinner? What is the place that's going to help you achieve your purpose, right? Should it be really convenient, or should it be like Burning Man, 10 hours out of the way in the middle of the desert, right? So think about the place that you need to bring people together. What's the fourth P? Shout out your ideas.
Guys, come on.
You can't think of more of these? All right.
Persuasion.
What is it?
Persuasion.
Persuasion? Kind of. It's participation. So should feel like obvious in a way. Like, of course, every community needs this. And so that's the point. You're planning out these are the obvious things you need to have. And we often don't think about participation, actually. We just think of participation as like, we want you to sit here and listen to me. But what do you want your members to do? What actions do you want them to take? Right? At the end, we wanted people to talk to each other. Do you want them to meet one person, or do you want them to just show up? Showing them exactly how to participate, how to get the most out of the community, how to enter the room, how to interact with other people. And actually bring them value. All right, so you have participation. I'll just do policy. How people should act and how they shouldn't act in the community. Not, but if we wanted me to be super vulnerable, we would have made a rule that says anything that's shared in this group doesn't leave this group, right? We have rules around how to treat each other. We have rules around what to post or not post in our communities. CMX, we have a no self-promotion rule. It's one of my favorite rules, so no one's promoting their own crap all the time, which is the quickest way to ruin a Facebook group. Trust me. So having very clear policies that, again, will create the kind of participation that will drive that purpose for your members and really give them a quality experience. A really good example of this is an organization called the Inside Circle Foundation. They go into maximum security prisons, and they build trust circles for all the inmates in the community. They create a space where they can be open and vulnerable. And a lot of these people are men who are going to be for life. They've spent their whole life being very closed off and reserved. And so their first rule is like when you walk in to the room, every single guy that walks in has to take off their armor and put it on and walk through the door. So it's a physical act that lets everyone in that group know we're here to be vulnerable and open. We've taken off our armor. right? And then they have rules like what's shared here doesn't leave here, violence. You have the right to pass and not have to explain why, which I really love that, right? We're always saying about how to activate our passive users in our community, but giving people permission to just passively be there, be present without needing to say something. It's really important. So these are the kinds of rules that let people know this is the kind of space we're creating. It's safe, here's why we're here, here's how we're gonna treat each other, so that I know I can participate without fear of being judged or attacked. 6, we have, what was it, promotion? So how are you bringing people into your community? Are you trying to make it really big? Are you trying to make it really small? What are the channels you're using to acquire new members and bring new members into your community? Right? Every community starts small. StartUpGrind started with 1 chapter, and now it's over 600 chapters. Facebook started as one school, and now it's a third of humanity is active on Facebook, literally. We're 3.5 degrees separated from every other human on the planet right now through Facebook. So it started as hot or not, basically, in one school, right, and grew from there. Starting really small and getting that kernel of community, that foundation right, and then you start to replicate that. Get one event right, and then empower your ambassadors to take that format and run with it and scale it. And then the last one is performance. So really important. What does success look like for your community? What metrics are you tracking? We break down metrics 3 levels. So the content you're creating, right? Like this content. Mike's going to send out a survey, and StartUpGrind's going to send out a survey afterward, and maybe, I don't know, just saying you might do that, and collect feedback and collect insights and know, was this event successful? How many people RSVP'd? How many people showed up? So you have your content. You posted an article, you posted in your community. Did that thing work? Then the next level is engagement. So over time, in the last 30 days, how many people came to events? How many people are active in our community? How many people are participating? And then you have objectives, which we tie back to that space model. So did the community actually drive value for organization and help us achieve an objective? All right, so people, purpose, place, participation, policy, promotion, and performance. You map out each of these 7 things, and you can use this as a framework anytime you're planning a new community, anytime you're trying to like reassess your existing community and kind of wrap your head around what you're doing again. You can come back to this framework and use it as a starting point.
Amazing.
Cool.
Any questions from the audience? Yeah, good. Yeah, about the good questions. We'll do a Q&A afterwards, but about the 7 Ps.
I have some snarky answers. Who shouldn't run a community?
Bad people.
It's bad people. Yes, right. So from a business perspective, we'll keep it PC. Yeah, I mean, I spend I get a lot of companies who come to me and say like, we want you to consult for us. We want to launch a community. And it's like my first job is actually to convince them not to launch a community, because 1, if you're not ready to resource or staff it, if you don't have someone who's going to be dedicated to community on your team, don't do it. A lot of companies launch a community and they just think, it's organic, it'll grow. Yeah, we'll all kind of be active. Just it has worked 0% of the time. It's not going to work. You need to have someone staff. We have data that shows that communities fail if you don't have at least one dedicated person running that community. So that's 1, is like make sure that you understand the value as an organization to the extent that you can actually put people and resources behind it. And then 2 is making sure that you're actually solving a real problem for people. If you figured out what the value is to your business, but you can't figure out what the value is to the members, don't do it until you really try to hone in and understood the value to the members. Otherwise, you'll have a community that will drive value in theory, but you're not going to get people to engage because you're not actually solving a real problem. You're not motivating them to participate.
There were the two questions, or you didn't know?
Okay. Okay, the second one.
Where do you see the future now?
That's an end question. We'll do that in the Q&A.
Yeah, but like the next stage, what would you make?
I promise, like I said, we'll do it in the end. It was relevant for the peas.
I'll remember.
About the peas? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so what's the value to community members? So we have like a number of different specific values that members can get, but things like support. So I actually have questions and I need answers. I have emotional problems or something that I need more emotional support around. I mean, not emotional problems necessarily, but I need emotional support around something. I can join a community. I want to learn something. We learn from our communities. We get education. I want to contribute to something that's meaningful in my life, be part of something that has purpose. That's a value people get from community. I want to improve my reputation, right? By organizing these events, does it help you with your reputation in your career and your network? Of course. Wish. All right, well, keep working on it. But people want to contribute and be the representative and be an ambassador because it helps them grow their career and their reputation. Sometimes it can be financial. Sometimes people get paid. Ideally, it's intrinsic. It's an intrinsic motivation. And actually, there's a few things that drive intrinsic motivation. One is autonomy. So people need to feel, and this is from Dan Pink's Drive book. Really, really good book on what motivates people. Drive by Daniel Pink. And so autonomy is people feeling that they have control and they have ownership over something. Mastery means they feel like they're learning something, improving themselves in some way. And I actually think all communities are aspirational. Humans join communities to be able to improve versions of themselves. And you need role models in the community who are the examples of who your newer members want to become. And you think about every community that's successful, there's role models, and then there's people who are essentially trying to model those people. So mastery, and the third is purpose. They need to feel like they are contributing to something meaningful and purposeful in their life. So those are three motivations, and then there's all different kinds of communities that you can run that drive different kinds of value.
Hey, what's your name? Ronnie? Thanks, Ronnie. So that leads us actually to our second model, the engagement cycle.
Yes.
So we said we're going to speak about the engagement cycle a bit.
Okay.
You want another model? You feel you want a bit more value? Yeah?
That's not like they want it.
Is
Do you want another model?
Yeah!
That's still kind of weak.
Guys, listen, you
Is
won't
it
be
late?
invited.
What's going
Benny
on?
was already invited to CMX.
We need more beer.
Rafi, yeah.
Can we have another model?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, Rafi, thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Should I use the whiteboard again? Back to the whiteboard mode. Okay. Okay. I use black.
That's what
probably
everyone knows. We fit our jacket or our shirts, jackets to the
Yeah,
chair.
we match our
That's
shirts,
really
our chairs.
thinking of every detail.
We planned it this way. Okay,
Stalling
so
for time until you raise the whiteboard.
how much time do we have?
I don't. My clock's a bit stuck, so
We're like 48 now? Yeah? Good. Yeah, like 15, 20 minutes.
Okay, so I'll do this one quick. So community engagement cycle is from the members' experience. Essentially, how does someone form a do people experience a sense of community? How does someone become a member of community and feel more engaged and committed to that community over time? Right, so you're now thinking about it from the members' perspective. It's almost like a journey, a cycle that they go through. And so there are 4 stages in the cycle. The first one is identity. So there's essentially different levels of identity that people go through. First, we identify with a group. This is a group for startups, and I'm a startup, I'm a founder. So it's the same category. It's called social categorization. So you're saying, I'm in this general category of the people in this group. And then they become more engaged and more committed, and then it's social identification. And so that means now I identify as a StartUpGrind member. right? I identify with it. I use the language. I use the terminology. I've adopted the identity of the community. And then the third one is social categorization, where social comparison, where you're actually comparing your community to other communities, and you almost have a competitive nature to it. Almost like screw those TEDx guys. StartUpGrind is where it's at, right? Now you almost feel like a protection over your identity, and so every community forms a social identity, and it comes with language, symbols, the way we greet each other, right? If you're a member of the same community, you might see them on the street and something shows you. I wear a chai from my Saba, so anyone who sees my chai knows I'm Jewish, and now if you're Jewish, you feel connected around that identity. So we form these identities in a community, and communities impact how our identities form. The next one is trust. So now I've identified with the community. It's startups, it's cool. I'm also in a startup, but I need to trust the event. I have to know if I go, I'm going to get value. I have to know if I go, there's going to be good people there. And so in the early stages, your community doesn't have an existing brand or existing trust or existing members. And so you have to, as the leader, personally build trust with people so that they will feel like they can come participate and they'll be motivated to participate. Then over time, you start to form a brand. Now, okay, I've heard of StartUpGrind, or my friend's a member and they recommended this to me. So now that trust is already existing in some way. And so we're ready to participate. So that's the third step, is participation. So I've identified with the community. I've trusted that if I participate, I'll enjoy it. It'll be a quality experience. I'll be safe. I know what the rules are. I know the policies. So I take an action. And at first, people take small actions. Maybe I'm not ready to go an event yet, but I'll subscribe to the email list, or I'll in the group, but I'm not ready to post yet. Eventually, I'll be able to contribute in big ways. But at first, we contribute in small ways. And so we contribute for that first time, and then we experience a reward. So the reward, I went to the event and I learned something. I met someone really, really cool. I formed a really strong connection. I had a peak moment, is another book called The Power of Moments by Chip and Dan Heath, where we don't remember total experiences. We only remember peak moments, right? So you're probably not going to remember 99.9% of what I'm saying right now, but maybe there's like one insight you took away that's really going to stick with you, or one person you met at this event that you actually have formed a really good relationship, and 10 years from now you're going to remember that you met at this event, right? So you feel some sort of reward, some intrinsic value. That tells our brain, this was a good experience, this is a community that rewards me, I feel like this is a good space for me to be in. So that reinforces a sense of identity. So over time, your identity is getting stronger and stronger because your identity increases. So now I feel more like I'm moving from that categorization to social identity. I feel like I'm a part of the StartUpGrind community. I trust it more because I had an experience and I got value. So now I trust it. I'm ready to come back again. Maybe next time I participate in a greater way. Maybe eventually I'll even host my own event or speak, or I contribute in greater and greater ways as I trust the community more. As I participate in greater ways, my rewards get better because I'm contributing in bigger ways and I feel better. I get more intrinsic motivation, and that identity then again gets deeper and deeper and deeper. So that's why it's a cycle that over time someone forms a really strong sense of social identity and a really strong sense of community.
Amazing. Thanks, David. Cool. Thanks, guys. Cool. So when you turn your back, like 2 people left, so we have only like 10, 15 minutes today. And also after we finish the Q&A, Yohan, can you raise your hand? So Yohan's doing an article about this event and about David and his coming and the whole ISCL summit. If you want to talk with Yohan and just say what you learned, what you felt was the most important thing you took away, back with you.
What you're going to do?
Take off.
what you're going to do.
Maybe what you're gonna do tomorrow morning as somebody that's building community or in marketing or in sales or in any other profession. So you're on with a red shirt, go to him, and the video guys will also maybe take a few shots. Time for Q&A. Like if it, we promised you that. This question, the guy here. Yeah, what's your name?
My name is Yoav.
Yoav.
Like, recommend like a good basic book that take us to the first steps of something.
What?
So, good book for the.
The basic how to start the community.
Um,
All the basics that you mentioned.
Next year, one. Is a good one by Rich Millington. Buzzing. What's the new one called? That remember? Writing it.
Writing
A lot of people writing books.
The best way is to read online, and on BMX have amazing material on the website.
Yeah, we have tons of materials
And
for
just on
free.
the website, then you can cruise in a much more easy way. Also, you said Richard, so Feverbee.
Feverbee is a good one. Community Roundtable is another good resource. And for me, well, another good book's actually The Art of Gathering. Really good. That's for physical events, in-person events. Really, really good book by Priya Parker. I don't read a ton of like how to build community books. I love books that I can kind of glean insights for community from other things.
I want to recommend like some non-community books. Two of them. One is Grit. If you heard about Grit, the book, I think just in general for entrepreneurs, it's one of the best books ever from 2015. Brilliant research about what makes people really succeed. And there you see, I think, when I help people build communities, I talk about nucleus community, how people should start the community and find their first circle of people that are initiators. And you need to find people with grit to take the community for you to the next stage, and grit to give you a notion of the kind of people you need to look for. And Hooked by Nir Ayal. You heard about Nir Ayal?
Oh, he spoke at our first event too.
Really? Oh, so he's amazing. Facebook used him a lot. Hooked has like 4 principles about how to hook people into social media. And I think you can take those principles and also apply it when you build a community.
Yeah. Near inspired a lot of the models I created.
Glad
You can also read the Fight Club.
Fight
Fight
Club.
Club.
Good book on community.
Really? First
I'll give a book more. Sapiens. If you ever read Sapiens, it's incredible. It's basically like the history of humans, and that really helps you understand like the motivations and why we form communities and the instincts that we have and how they're, and then you can think about how they're applying today.
In Hebrew, it's the history of humanity.
It's not called Sapiens. Okay, the history of humanity.
It's got the short history.
Agreed.
That's a different book. Different book.
No, it's the same.
Not the same book. No, there's a book called A Brief History of Humanity
That's what
So I think you're talking about the second one, because
by Noah Yuval Harari.
So no, listen, it's Sapiens. He's writing Sapiens. In Hebrew, it's Taksir Tolod HaRashut. It's a brief of history, and
Okay, because there's another book that's called it. Anyway.
So yeah, so that's Yuval. That's the name in Hebrew, and it was originally in Hebrew. So
Yeah.
you're very
Right. So you're right. I'm wrong.
But he has a second book called
Yeah.
Homo Deus.
Yeah, I bought it. I haven't read it yet. It's big.
So can I spoiler one thing about it, or
What's that?
about the second book? Can I say something about it, or you want to read
I
it?
don't know how much time.
Just a small thing. So there in the second book, he says about the 3 new assignments or goals or missions of humanity. And one of them is being happy. And when you think about why people join community, what's the most intrinsic need for people to join a community? Because they feel sad. And communities make them feel better among themselves. So I think that's also a good book for. Yeah, we got the message. We're leaving soon. And last, Kefet, we got your second questions? Yeah, sorry. Okay, guys, we can continue. I don't know if Adas is closing the lights, who's closing. It can be very intimate, by the way, intimacy and everything. So wait, Kefet, and then Omri has the questions.
So my last question was, how do you see the next step of next generation of communities? Because I think communities are becoming a bit more common. So everything needs innovation, and what's the added value of next generation?
Yeah. So, I mean, broadly speaking, like on a societal level, I mean, I think we're more lonely than ever before, right? There's a loneliness epidemic. Over 50% of Americans, adults in the US, report feeling lonely or very lonely. Suicide rates are up, religion's on the decline. So people are craving intimate, meaningful community, and there's less options for it. And so I think we're going to see a lot of organizations and different groups start to fill those gaps, right? Like lots of people are leaving Facebook, but actually Facebook groups is increasing in popularity. And now half of their active users are active on groups, which is 1/6 of humans is active on Facebook groups. So people are seeking more intimate, more meaningful community, and that's creating a really big opportunity and responsibility for businesses as well. I think for businesses, I mean, I've said this for 10 years, and now I think it's coming true that community is the future of business, both because people want it, that's how they want to experience businesses and consumerism, and also because it's actually just a better way to run a business, right? You can empower a movement of ambassadors and contributors to be building around you. You can grow a business exponentially faster. You can scale your product exponentially faster. You can grow your customer base a lot faster. And so it's a huge opportunity. I think what's happening now, what we need to see happen and what's going to happen is community professionals and community teams are going to get a lot better at business. They're going to get a lot better at data. Right now, everyone who's working in community is coming from a communal background, nonprofits, teachers. No one studied community. Nobody went to business school for the most part. But the teams that are really succeeding and scaling their programs are tying their work to business goals. They're bringing in data so they can say, we hosted this event, 30% of those people were new customers, 30% of those people were prospects, 30% of those people were existing customers, and we know exactly how our community program is impacting our retention and our growth and our support, our NPS, and then they're scaling their programs up like crazy. Or like companies like Salesforce, they have millions of members in their community and dozens of community professionals on their team, and they're scaling like crazy. It's everywhere in that business. Or Duolingo, they're running 500 events per week right now, 2,000 events per month. Yeah, it was 1,000 like 2 months ago, and she just updated me. She's going to be speaking at CMX Summit about how they built this program, and she just updated me. She's like, it's up to 500 a week now. And they have 3 people running that program. And they have 2,000 events a month with 3 people. It's because they're empowering a community, and they're being data-driven, and they're organizing in that way. And so that's the future, is for community to kind of move more in the direction of being business-savvy, data-driven, and that's how they're going to scale in these really extreme ways.
Tomorrow we're going to have also a talk from the Global Health Community and Move It that managed 210 communities in 2,800 cities with a team of 12 people.
Yeah, it's unbelievable the scale that you can have with a small team. Like Laura Nessler is running that team, and it's just like taking off after a little bit.
Amazing. Hey, you wanted a question? Where's the Lee? Lee wanted a question. Lee. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm actually a member in few close communities and also a few open communities, let's call it like that. And I'm kind of have the feeling that the members in the closed communities are more engaged with the communities than the members in the open communities. Do you have any explanation? Do you think it's the right assumption to say?
Yeah.
Do you think it will be right to try to create closed community or just to feel like a closed community?
Yeah, good question. So the question was, he's saying in closed communities there's more engagement than in open communities, and why is that happening? So there's a couple of reasons. One, something called barriers to entry, which is from that sense of community theory I mentioned before. So if people have to earn their way into a community, they value it more and they feel more connected to each other, right? And so if you have to qualify in some way, if you have to apply and be approved, if it's closed and you don't know what's in there, there's almost like that curiosity, and then you're given access, you feel more privileged, you feel more exclusive, and so you feel more like connected to the other people who are in there, right? And then the other part is privacy. People care about privacy. They care about being able to say something without it being public on the web, especially today. Privacy is becoming more and more and more important. And so In closed groups, people tend to feel more comfortable sharing, engaging. If it's open and they don't know who can see it, they're a lot more reserved and they're a lot less likely to participate.
So do you think even to open and big community, it will be a right move to try to create a new closed communities of ambassadors, for example?
It depends on the purpose. So I would go back to purpose and figure out, why does this community exist? Do we need less people to feel really engaged? Do we need more people? Right, like look at the Women's March in the US, the largest march in US history. They don't want that closed. They want as many people as possible on the streets protesting, right? So tie it back to your purpose. Are we trying to create something that's extremely open? Or do we want something that's more exclusive and intimate? And you can do both. With CMX, we have our open Facebook group that anyone can join. And then we have CMX Pro as our paid membership. You have to pay, you have to qualify. It's more intimate, it's owned. And so it's a different dynamic in each of those communities. We have our summit, which is, costs money to go to. It's not a cheap event. So you want to come to the big conference and be there, there's that barrier to entry. But then we have our CMX Connect events that are local chapters all over the world. And those are free and generally open to anyone to join, because we want to get more people involved all over the world. So it depends on the purpose.
Hello.
So, what do you do when maybe some customer in the community gives a bad reputation or bad review on the product or service that you have, and then other customers also join in, and basically it's not something that you're going to change, but it's it totally blows up. And then you feel like you don't want it to be anymore.
Yeah.
Why is this happening? And you've
Mhm.
tried and you've even know how to break this community. Why is this happening? So what do you do?
Yeah. So this is a great question. So what happens when there's negativity in the community? People are giving negative feedback about the product. They're upset. This is very common concern for businesses. So why should we open up this space? We have a lot of people who don't like us. And my first response is like, well, that seems like the problem. If people are upset with your product and they're upset with your brand, first of all, that's the issue. Not that they don't have somewhere to talk about it, because they're going to talk about it somewhere. Right? So don't let that stop you from organizing a community, because actually you have a lot more control over that conversation, a lot more influence over it if it's in a space that you're organizing versus in public spaces where you have no control. So first, understand that mentality. Second, talk to people. If that person cares enough to be posting in the community, to be giving that feedback, to be sharing that stuff, that means they care. They care about the product. They want to see it better. They want to see it improve. They want you to hear them. So make them feel heard. Get on the phone with every single one of those people. You're going to learn a lot more about your product than if you just sent out a survey generally. Right? You're going to learn a ton. And what you want them to feel is that they're being heard and responded to. People get upset and they'll spiral out of control when people don't feel heard, right? So people are commenting, they're piling on, say, listen, clearly this is extremely important to all of you. We hear you, we want to address this, we want to get better. We're going to be reaching out to you personally to really hear you and learn what you want to see. Get on the phone with those people, learn, get that feedback, hear them, make them feel heard, and then go back to the community and say, great, we spoke to 20 of you from this thread. Here are the things that we heard, and here's exactly what we're going to do about it. Now all of a sudden, you're letting those people know they're heard, you're letting them know that you're doing something about it, and you can actually turn those passionate detractors into advocates. Because now they'll say, great, if you're going to do something, then, well, awesome. And then if you follow through and do something about it, and then you come back to them a month later and you say, great, we said we're going to do this. We've launched it now. We would love your feedback. Here are office hours where you can talk to us. We've already reached out to a lot of you and brought you into the process of building this. And now all of a sudden you have a rapport with them. They feel heard. They feel like they want to be a part of it. They want to be a part of making it better. And you're giving them that opportunity.
Great question. And I think it also answered a bit of your question about the future of community.
I think we'll see people that need to be professional, need to be good in many skills, like they in the beginning had to read different books. So crisis management is a skill you have to have as a community manager, managing communication. And that's something that we'll build on. We'll see people with efficiency of different kind of marketing, of crisis management, of communication, of different comes together, collected, and that will be the new position of community manager.
Great point. And I would add Nonviolent Communication is another great book you can read, and that's a really good way to communicate with people in times of crisis.
Cool. Okay, well, there's a lot of questions. When everybody's tired, we'll stop. But Adam, yeah.
So, what do you think about the chatbots and automation with community management?
Yeah. So what I think about automation and community management. I think it's great. I think there's a lot of things that can be automated. People who have the same questions over and over again in a support forum, for example, if you can automate and get them the answer as quickly as possible. Like support forums, a lot of people don't actually care about talking to each other. If they can just get their answer as quickly as possible, that's awesome. Automation and AI to help you identify trolls or negativity or things in your community for moderation, that's huge. Make the moderator's job a whole lot easier. There are things like manually a single member every week that joined our group in the Facebook group and welcome them to the community. Facebook saw that we were doing that, they made it into a feature. So now you can just press a button and say welcome new members, and it automatically tags all the new members who joined in the last week. And so that's a form of automation, something that we were doing very manually for a long time, that then they turned into an automated process. So I think looking for those repetitive things are really great. What you don't want to do is respond to emotional situations or take away the fabric of community and relationship building by trying to remove the humans from it. Because at the end of the day, community is all about being human and all about conversations and real.
Good, Adam. Great.
Downside of the rise of community well with the people that we identify with and less exposed to a variety of voices and people.
Yeah, so downsides of communities where people just tend to kind of get in their bubble and only hear from the same people. Absolutely. I mean, that's age-old problem, right? In some ways, like we have access to more information than ever before, but what these social platforms has done is essentially isolate us into filter bubbles, is what they call them, right? Like we're only seeing things that we agree with and we don't see things that we disagree with. I think it's always going to be a challenge. It's the nature of communities is we form these identities and the cycle goes, and now I more and more strongly identify with this group, which means I believe as they believe and I have the same values, but there might be completely different groups that have very different values or very different beliefs that I'm not seeing and it's not being reinforced for me. And so I think it's up to the leaders who are building community to think about what diversity and inclusion means in their groups. We talk a lot about diversity and inclusion as bringing in people from underrepresented groups, which is one part of it, but I think it's also just underrepresented voices in your community, right? So as a community leader, what are the voices that, I love the question, what voice isn't present here? That's a really good question to ask. Like look around this room and ask like, whose voices are not present here? And then, should they be present here? Is there a reason they're not here? Is there something blocking them from being here? And how can we be intentional about making sure those people are in the room? And you do that through diversity and inclusion programs and scholarship programs and things that knock out the barriers or the things preventing those voices from being present. So I think it's always going to be a challenge. I think we have a lot of really good tools now, and I think like the pressure has been like more and more on the social platforms to do something about that as well. And hopefully it gets better. If it doesn't, we'll have to find new solutions. Yeah, great question.
Lee, you have
Just a quick one. You mentioned value a lot of the times. Value is an abstract thing. How do you break it down into, events or products or services?
Value to the business or to members?
Whatever. How do you break down value?
The space model. Cool.
Last one. Last final question? Great, last one. Yes, what's your name? Leon? Beautiful name. Yes.
So to get people who aren't as active in the community to be more active. Okay. So first thing is most people won't, right? So the 99-1 rule, the consume, 9% will create new content.
Check on Wikipedia the culture.
The people who are participating and figure out how to enhance their participation, support them, how to make them more successful. You know, even if you just have a few, a lot, that's great. Like, make them really successful, put the spotlight on them, make them feel really special, give them exclusive access, make them into an ambassador or a moderator, because they're going to fuel that activity in an organic way. Second, you want to also think about what might be preventing people from participating in your community. Maybe they don't know how to. So you can be more specific when they first do it. You're just saying, welcome to the community, figure it out. You know, that's overwhelming for people. So maybe they don't know how to participate. It could be a new habit for them, right? When we talk about place and thinking about do you want a place that's more convenient or less convenient? If it's less convenient, that means you're changing their habits, which is really, really hard. Which is why Facebook groups, it's really easy to build engagement a lot of the time on Facebook groups because people are already there, they get the notifications, they're already on Facebook a lot. If you're creating your own space, it's going to take more time because you're creating a new habit, a new routine for people to participate in. And you'll need to really get intentional about the emails and notifications and the way you're drawing them back into that community on a regular basis. So those are some of the practical things. On the highest level, you just really need to make sure that you have the right people and the right purpose, right? You're communicating why this needs to exist, and you're getting the right people in the room. A lot of the time, communities fail because they have this great purpose, and they don't really curate and really think about how do we get the right people in the room, and now they find themselves trying to force people to participate rather than finding the people who are already authentically, organically interested in participating and bringing them into the room. And then you can't stop them. It's just going to go like fire, right?
Okay, off your friend, so last question.
But actually, that's the 1% of the community actually creating content and participate in the level of staff. That's it. How do you recommend putting them together and communicating with them in a way that they will feel special, but as well as if you wanted to talk about stuff that the rest of the community, it's not their business, so how do you say do that?
So the question is, for the 1% of people who are participating the most, your power users, how do you create a community for them and connect them with each other? Yeah, so you should. First of all, it's a great thing that most businesses do, right? So you can think of Yelp has the Yelp Elite program. So for their people who are writing the most reviews on Yelp, they have a massive program for them. They give them exclusive access to events and community programs and benefits and perks, and they learn about the new products features that are released for us. So they create all these benefits and programs for them. You have Airbnb Superhosts, right? Another power user program. You have Wikipedia editors for their top editors. You have all these essentially power user programs for your most active people. And so one thing to do is give them a title like Yelp Elite or Superhost. Like give them, it's their own identity. Right? So you have your general identity and then give an identity to your power users that make them feel like they have their own group, they have their own sub-community within that network. And then create a space for them. A lot of people use Slack because it's a smaller group, so chat-based communities might work better for your power users. Use Slack or create a Facebook group or an email list, or you don't need a massive platform. Or if you have a forum, maybe you create a private section just for them. And then think about so you give them a title, what are the other benefits you have, right? For us, we have CMX hosts, our chapter hosts, our chapter leaders for our local events. So they get free tickets to our conference, they get discounts on our training programs, they get access to tools like, so CMX was acquired by Bevy, which is what StartUpGrind runs on, is the Bevy platform. So, you know, they get perks and access to the Bevy team and Bevy resources. So we essentially provide them with benefits that they're getting for, like, as rewards, and then they have their own identity, and we have them all in a Slack channel. So, right, so it depends on the community. Generally, you want them to qualify. So you want them to already show the level of activity and commitment that they need to get into it. To be in the Yelp Elite, you need to write a certain amount of reviews and be active for a certain amount of time. With Superhost and Airbnb, you need to have a certain amount of host experiences, and you need to not have any like cancellations. If you have a cancellation, you don't get to be a Superhost anymore. For CMX, for if you're doing chapter leaders like StartUpGrind or CMX Connect or Creative Mornings or any of these chapter programs, which are blowing, like the Duolingo one is a chapter program, in-person community. You want to really curate those people. You have a send us a video, and then even then they have to host, I think, 3 events before. So it's important that those people achieve that level, right? That barrier to entry of to be
Good question to close. So guys, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
You're in the booth. So thank you so much. It was so interesting. Thank you guys for coming again. Thank you StartUpGrind for hosting. Be all for hosting us in your amazing venue. And that's it. So until tomorrow, we're coming tomorrow at 9 a.m. or so with some content. Yeah, we're coming.
I'll be there.
We'll see you tomorrow. Bye guys.
Thank you. Good.